Now that we have gone through all of the different levels of organization, we're going to start on our very first system, the integumentary system, or our skin. There are two major components to the integumentary system: the skin, which is the cutaneous membrane, and the accessory structures. There are three major layers associated with the skin. The epidermis consists of a superficial epithelium. This is the stratified squamous epithelium. Under the epidermis lies the dermis. The dermis is an underlying layer of connective tissue. Lastly, the hypodermis consists of loose connective tissue. The hypodermis is not technically part of the skin, but it plays an important supporting role. The type of tissue that makes up the epidermis is called stratified squamous epithelium. There are two main cell types found in the epidermis, and these are the keratinocytes and melanocytes. The function of the epidermis is to provide mechanical protection and to keep microorganisms out. There is both thick and thin skin and refers to the relative thickness of the epidermis or the number of epidermal layers or stratum. Let's take a look at the layers of the epidermis. Each major layer of the epidermis is called a stratum. Each stratum contains several rows of epithelial cells. We're going to start with the outermost layer. This layer you can touch with your hands and is called the stratum corneum. The stratum corneum consists of 15 to 30 rows of dead, flat cells. In these cells, there is a lot of keratinization, meaning these cells are essentially filled with keratin intermediate filaments. It's a superficial layer of cells, and it forms a protective, waterproof covering which helps prevent water loss from our body. The stratum lucidum is located just below the stratum corneum, but is only found in thick skin. Thick skin is found on the soles of your feet and the palms of your hands. The stratum lucidum generally appears clear or lucid, which is how it gets the name lucidum. In this stratum, the keratinocytes are flat, they're packed together tightly and filled with keratin proteins. Next is the stratum granulosum, or grainy layer. It's usually a thinner layer and only contains a few rows of keratinocytes. 3 to 5 rows of keratinocytes occupy this layer. The cells have stopped dividing, and we are synthesizing keratohyalin and keratin proteins. These keratohyalin and keratin granules accumulate within the cytosol of the cell. The keratinocytes are beginning to die and dehydrate. Next is the stratum spinosum. This stratum is referred to as the stratum spinosum because the keratinocytes have a spiny appearance when looked at under high magnification. This stratum contains 8 to 10 rows of keratinocytes held together by desmosomes. Desmosomes are junctions that hold epithelial cells together very tightly. Keratin intermediate filaments are attached to these desmosomes. Another cell type found here is called a Langerhans cell. Langerhans cells are part of our immune system, and it helps to attack any microorganisms that happen to make their way into the superficial layers of the epidermis. The last layer is the stratum germativium, or stratum basale. This is a single layer of cuboidal-shaped cells that sit on the basement membrane separating the epidermis from the dermis. It also helps to form epidermal ridges. The epidermal ridges help the epidermis attach to the dermis and form fingerprints. The cells in this stratum can divide. As the cells divide, they will move up into the stratum spinosum and then eventually into the stratum granulosum, where they will start to form more of the keratin granules. And then if it's thick skin, we'll move to the stratum lucidum, and then lastly to the stratum corneum. Once the cells reach the top of the stratum corneum, they are sloughed off. Also, within the stratum basale are something called melanocytes. Melanocytes are interspersed throughout the stratum and produce pigment that gives skin its color. The dermis is between the epidermis and the hypodermis. It consists primarily of connective tissues, both loose connective tissue and dense irregular connective tissue. The dermis contains a lot of blood vessels and accessory structures to the integumentary system. There are 2 layers associated with the dermis. The papillary layer is the top layer consisting of areolar connective tissue and contains capillaries and some sensory nerve endings. The papillary layer also is part of the epidermal ridges. Again, these ridges help the epidermis to attach to the dermis and create fingerprints. The particular layer is composed of dense, irregular connective tissue. It also contains some sensory receptors as well as blood vessels and hair follicles. The irregular, dense connective tissue consists of collagen bundles, which are responsible for something called the lines of cleavage, which we will talk about a little later. Lastly, the hypodermis, which is not seen in this picture, is composed of areolar connective tissue and adipose tissue. What are lines of cleavage and why are they important? You can see here from this diagram all these lines on this body. These lines represent the organization of the collagen bundles within that dermal layer. These lines help to provide movement and flexibility to the skin. The fibers are oriented in such a way that they are tough and durable, but again, provide important flexibility. Clinically, they are important when surgeries are performed. During surgery, if an incision is made that is parallel to the line of cleavage, that incision will heal with very little scarring. However, if you make an incision across or perpendicular to a line of cleavage, that wound will want to pull open because of the collagen fibers, and this can lead to excessive scarring. Stretch marks occur when the elastic properties of the skin are exceeded. This causes damage to the dermis and prevents it from returning to its original size. Stretch marks can appear with excessive weight gain and during pregnancy. For this assignment, I want you to read through the corresponding information in the textbook and answer these questions.